Welcome to the topic. Excuse me, I apologize. I'm getting over a little respiratory. Welcome to the topic where we highlight Houston Community College, our students, our programs, and our reach into the community. I'm Daniel Scholl, a financial coach here at HCC, and we're here every Thursday afternoon when HCC is in session live at 2 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. Follow us on social media as Houston Community College District and watch us on HCC TV via your local cable provider. Today is part of our continuing special topic series called Financial Focus. Every other month, we bring you ideas for working more skillfully with your finances to live your best life, take care of your family, and benefit your community. My guest today is Dr. Richard Simonds. He's an assistant professor of social work and the director of the Financial Coaching and Economic Stability Lab in the College of Public Service at the University of Houston downtown. Go Gators! Today we're going to be discussing the behavioral side of our finances. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Dan, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure to have you on. This I think second time you've been on. We had great conversation before. I'm looking forward to some more conversations. I want to start out talking about value. So often when we talk about money, we talk about end goals, right? Or how do you get there? Let's start maybe talking about where you should be at the very beginning. Why are values important to managing your money?
So values are really at the base. And if you go and think about it from a mindset perspective, right, Dan? When we are talking about what we want to do, what we want to be, and how we're spending our money, it can be very easy to think, I just need more money to do this, or I need more money to do that. But taking a step back to say, what do I really value and what's important to me can be vital in you deciding how you spend your money and will the way that you manage your money really bring you happiness that you're seeking. Right. And the unique part about it is everybody's value is different. And so if you value kids being active in music, you may put your money in there. And one thing that I have learned talking to organizations and individuals across Houston is a lot of times people all of a sudden take a step back and go, wow, I was making a lot of money. I was spending a lot of money, but it wasn't ever enough because it was never aligning with my values. And that is a piece that I often miss. So I love how you said that that needs to start at the very beginning.
Now, you said something interesting. You said, everybody's got different values.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there that want to tell you what your values should be. How does somebody arrive at finding their own values?
So if you ever are trying to do something your friend does or your neighbor does or somebody does because they seem to really enjoy it with the money, and it's easy for us to think, oh, that's what I want to do too. But one thing that we've learned and one thing that the research said is sitting down and thinking about not just with money, but what is important to me in my life, right? There's some great resources online where you can go through and take value tests. But what I challenge my students to do at the University of Houston downtown, and what I challenge individuals to do when I'm talking to them is if you have four values that are important to you, and somebody would say, right, Dan, if I'm thinking about you, I know Dan, this is important. This is important. That will be defining the values. Because if I start with that in mindset, and then if I say, am I spending my money in a way that honors those values? It's amazing how that process works differently that way.
How so? How does that process work different?
So if you think about it, right? So the one thing that we have seen is that it's very easy to go online to see this product, to see that product, to do these things, right? I was watching TV last night with my kids, and one thing that my kids said is that we need to go on vacation about 9 different places because look at how much fun they're having. And then it goes, hold on, do you like it to be cold? Well, no. My daughter hates the cold. It's like, well, they're having a lot of fun skiing. Skiing looks fun. Is that something you really think you would have fun doing? Right. And so, even though that's not necessarily a value, but it's something that's important to her, what she does. Another activity that we do is we say, let's track our expenses and see where we're spending our money. And as soon as I ask people to do that, or I say, let's look at bank statements together, you're amazed at how many people go, not going to happen, which is understandable, but they're
No,
afraid to go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I said 100%, right?
Yeah.
People make decisions and vote with their pocketbooks. I hear people say all the time, like, "Hey, I don't like XYZ company, so I won't shop there." And we'll pick on Walmart for a second. You hear that a lot. I don't like
Yep.
Walmart. I'm not going to shop at Walmart. Yeah, Walmart is the largest retailer in the United States for a reason, right?
Yep.
How often do you see a disconnect between what people say, what they think their value should be, and what the actual, spending record reflects?
So I like to go back to the idea, Dan, of this is what I want to be versus this is what I'm currently doing, right? And it's great that we want to be it, but taking those steps can be difficult. And the other thing that I've learned, something that humans are really, really great at, is justifying why they did something, right? I mean, I am as guilty as the next person of saying those things. But if we're thinking about it from the values and the money perspective, is go back to the Walmart example. I'm not going to shop at Walmart, but they have the cheaper price, so I'm just going to go there once. They are the only one that carries this brand of ABC, so I'm only going to go there for that, right? And so we have these things that come into play, but if the value is I'm not going to follow the money, follow that checkbook, and you'll be amazed at what it is. One thing that we've learned is that talking to a lot of people is a lot of people value family, they value security, they value that community type aspect. And when we sit down and we ask the really simple question of, well, great, from that perspective, how do you feel you're doing and what do you want to make change? People often get the opportunity to sit back and say, I may want to do something a little bit different with my money. And that can be challenging and hard to time too, right? We're all very comfortable doing what we're doing because that's what we're comfortable doing. So doing something new is tough.
Sure is. And so you mentioned something interesting there. You talk about making change.
Yeah.
First thing you need to do when you're going to make changes is really kind of think about your goal setting. Do values help us set our goals?
I think the values need to be the pivotal aspect that helps us set our goals, right? One thing that we've learned is that if our values, our goals, and our money all align, it's amazing what happens and amazing the opportunity, right? People get up and they start working towards those, right? Goals are really, really great things that I've learned that us as humans are really bad at setting. I believe us setting bad goals is actually one of the reasons why we are not successful of achieving the goals, right? Because again, we say our future self is going to do this differently, as opposed to our future self is doing, or our present self are doing these activities to get to where we need to be.
Are there any tricks you recommend in helping people, set achievable goals?
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you're looking to set achievable goals, we have a few things that we're going to challenge people to do, especially around money. The first is do not try to set goals when bills are due. It's really hard to set financial goals when you sit down to pay the goals. The other thing we recommend is if you go ahead and search SMART goals, SMART, right? They talk about it a lot in classes. They talk it a lot in business professional development. But if I have a goal that's very specific, a goal that I can actually measure to know how well I'm doing at it, is it attainable to me? Is it relevant and is it timely? It's good. And just a real quick example I give often is if my goal, go ahead.
I was going to say, why don't you hold on to that
Yes,
example? We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to hear that example, and then we're going to talk about how you can take those goals and create your budgets.
I love it.
All right, we'll see you on the flip side.
Sometimes what you need just shows up. Houston Community College has your back, whether you're knocking out some basics or upping your game for a better job. Enroll today for spring classes and frame your future with HCC.
For more than a year, we have kept you informed with more than 500 remote episodes. But now we're back, bigger and better with more news and more guests. Join us live every weekday at 10 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube, and on HCC TV at noon and 5 p.m. You can watch from anywhere. We go where you go.
Welcome back to the topic. We're talking about your mind and money with Dr. Richard Simonds, Assistant Professor of Social Work and the Director of the Financial Coaching and Economic Stability Lab in the College of Public Service at the University of Houston downtown. Welcome back, Richard. Hey, right before we went to break, you said you were going to give us an example of some SMART goal setting.
So smart goal setting, but then also what is not smart goal setting and how we think about it. And so I often say, people come to me all the time and say, Dan, I want to save more money. I love it. Great goal. And then I challenge them to say, well, on your way from walking where you are to your car, if you find a dime on the floor, on the ground, you pick it up, you put it in your pocket, that means you've accomplished the goal. Right? And like you're looking at me, everyone looks at me and says, well, no, not at all. It's like, but you save more money, and that's what your goal needed to be. Right.
Right.
So when we're talking about savings, when we're talking about budgeting with as a verb instead of budgeting with a noun, when we're talking about increasing our financial wellness, what we're doing, it's always important to know exactly what I want to be saving for. Right. Savings is a really good example to use as we're starting this out, because if I want to take a vacation in 2 years, I can figure out how much is that vacation going to cost me, how much I need to save, and I can get a very specific number. And the great thing about financial goals is a lot of times if there's numbers, math is really easy to do, because I can say if I want to save $1,200 and I have a year to do it, it's $100 a month.
Right.
And then the other part about SMART goals, which isn't part of the SMART acronym, but something I think is just as important, is when are we going to review those goals? When are we going to sit down and look at it? Because after 6 months, for that example I just gave, if I have $600 in the bank, fantastic. I'm doing a great job. But usually if I do not, it's not because of what I'm currently doing with my finances is wrong, or I need to do something different. It might be, but it could have been I set a bad goal, and $100 a month, I didn't even have to start with. I just picked a random number, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. Picking a bad goal. Instead of maybe the word bad, I might use the word unrealistic, right?
I love that.
When we were kids, we were told we could be what when we grow up? Anything we want, right?
Anything at all.
But as we got a little bit older, we realized that's maybe not necessarily true. I could set a goal all I want to be a professional basketball player. I still only grew to be 5'9". Talk about realistic goal setting.
Yeah. And so realistic goal setting, the amazing thing is, especially with goals we have, when we talk about being realistic, is what am I able to accomplish? Right. And a lot of that does depend on how much money is coming in, how much money is coming out, and where we look. The few things I do want to say about having realistic goals, and as we're setting those move forward, and the mindset is, people often think that a goal has to be this huge, enormous thing that I'm going to accomplish. It's going to be revolutionary. I'm going to end up on the cover of Times. They're going to write a novel about me. Taylor Swift's next song is going to be about how amazing I am. But in reality, the goals, to be realistic, can scaffold, right? I can do one little step here. Now that I've achieved this, how am I going to do a second step there? Because when we look at some of these really big goals, it can be very daunting, right? I know at University of Houston downtown, a lot of people have a goal. Oh, I'm going to graduate with my master's. Fantastic. Where are you now? Well, I'm still applying for my bachelor's program. Cool. There's a whole lot of little goals that we can put in place, right, on how we can do. The other thing that about realistic goal setting, especially in the financial way, is to set a good goal for savings, to set a good goal for credit, to set a good goal for paying off debt, retirement, however we want to look at it, often starts with how we're currently managing our money now. And we don't like that. We just want to skip the whole managing now. We just want to do whatever the next thing is. And I found out that that can be very much a challenge for individuals.
So earlier we mentioned that, goal setting can help us with budgets.
Yeah.
You also said that, the way we're currently managing our money. I want to talk about budgets because, however you're currently managing money, whatever you're currently doing, whether or not you think you have a budget, you do. However you spend your money, right? That's your budget. Let's talk about that. Let's also talk about the negative feelings that we have around budgets, because I think people do think of them as kind of a negative, right? What are you doing this weekend? Nothing. Why not? I'm on a budget. I can't do anything, right? Talk to me about the way we feel about budgets and how our values and our goals can make us feel better about those budgets.
Yeah. So often people do think that budgets are restrictive. You can change the name of it. I like to think of a budget as what I'm planning on doing, right? And it can be amazing things. You want to go on a vacation? Fantastic. It's part of that. You want to be spontaneous and spend money however you want to? Great. Well, it depends on how much money's coming in. You may be able to be $200 spontaneous because you want to make sure that you're doing these other things as well. I'm a big believer, Dan, that everybody makes a choice every time they spend money. I often ask groups I work with, do you have to pay your rent or your mortgage? Everyone always says yes. And I say, no, you do not. Well, yes, I do, or I get kicked out. You're right. You understand the consequences of not. You value the security the housing brings, so you make a choice to spend money to do those things, right? But when we think about a budget, often we think we're being restrictive. And I like what you said there is, well, what are you going to have for dinner? Asparagus and broccoli because I'm on a diet, right? You can't do things. I like to think of a budget is look at the opportunity I have. And there's a few ways I feel to be real successful in budgeting. The first is I want to challenge people to treat budgeting as a verb instead of a noun. And here's what I mean. It can be both, but people often think a budget is, okay, I wrote it all down once. I have a budget. Typically, we do it the first week of January. If I do it there, I put it on the refrigerator and I'm done. But budgeting and working with your money is a verb that you consistently need to work with and consistently need to do because it's going to change, right? Dan, do you know how much money you're going to spend in gas for your car next January?
Too much.
Correct. But, right, nobody knows exactly what it's going to be. So there needs to be some flexibility. The other thing that we've learned is instead of using a template, templates are great. They give us ideas. But what I challenge people to do is get a white piece of computer paper, a pencil, and say, great, how much money's coming in? Put that number at the top of the page, and it doesn't matter what the number is, $200, $2,000, $20,000. And you say, how do you want to spend your money this month? Well, it may not work exactly as you have planned, but it's going to make you start thinking, I want to do these things. And wanting to do something with your money to meet those values is very different than you sitting down when bills are due. The same thing works a lot with couples, where we find that couples spend money and talk about budgeting as they're paying bills. Doesn't tend to work out as well as if we're spending and saying, what do we want to do with our money this month to get to where we want to be?
Do you find when you work with your students and your clients that changing that negative mindset to more positive, hey, it's not a budget, it's a spending plan. Do you find that resonates with people, or is that more just word salad?
So I find that people are very hesitant with it. They like the idea of word salad, or they like the idea, but they think it is just word salad. You're changing it, but it takes a while. But as people start doing it, I think they really start getting into the idea behind it. I like to also think that budgeting is a muscle that you need to flex. If you've never done one, you rarely do one, you don't like looking at it, you're afraid to open up your bank account because you never like what it says, you tend not to. And every time you choose not to, you flex the muscle of not doing it. And so it takes some time. But when we get in that mindset of I do, it's the same idea, Dan. I know we both worked with individuals who bought homes, and they go from, yay, I have my own home, to I have to pay a mortgage this month. No,
right.
You don't have to, but that mindset changes one way very hard. And it's much more difficult to go back the other way of saying, I get to pay my mortgage to have my home.
Yes, absolutely. So, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the concepts of where we're, how we're getting to where we're at. We're going to take a small break. When we come back, what I want to do is talk about how do we take those concepts and actually turn them into actionable items. Yeah. And what are the obstacles that we face about that? We'll be back in about a minute.
Sometimes what you need just shows up. Houston Community College has your back, whether you're knocking out some basics or upping your game for a better job. Enroll today for spring classes and frame your future with HCC.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Things could be stranger, but I don't know how. I'm going through changes, through all of the strangeness. I'm going through changes now.
Welcome back to the topic. We're talking about how our behavioral and thoughts impact our finances with Dr. Richard Simonds, Assistant Professor of Social Work and Director of the Financial Coaching and Economic Stability Lab in the College of Public Service at the University of Houston, downtown. All right, Richard. So, we've talked about values and we establish our values, and then from that, we extrapolate our goals. And now we're going to make sure that our budget kind of reflects our goals, and we're making sure that they're ours and not others. What are some of the actionable items that we need to be doing once we have a budget? Because as you and I know, if you don't do anything with it, a budget is just a bunch of squiggly lines on a piece of paper.
Then it is. There's squiggly lines on a piece of paper, and then we go back to think, oh, I did a budget once and I do it again, and we repeat that. So to make it actionable, there's a few things that I always challenge people to do. The first is I'm challenging people to use it as a living document. And again, I'm going to go back to the idea that budgeting is a verb, not a noun. It is something you're doing. It is an action. It's how it's working. The second thing is there's some pitfalls that you can really avoid when you go through, right? The first one I like to call the what the hell effect, right? All of a sudden, and the example works really, really well with, say, I'm trying to diet, because anytime we try to change is if I'm trying to diet and I'm doing really well and I show up at work and somebody brought donuts into the office. Well, I'm on a diet today, but I'm going to have just one. And then I get into my first meeting and they have chocolate to pass out. So I'm just going to have one. And then somebody says, hey, we're going to this great new bistro down the way for lunch. Go ahead. And then someone says, do you want to go get ice cream? What the hell? My diet is blown. I'm going to try again I'm going to try again tomorrow. I'm going to try again next month. And I find people do the same thing with the budget, right? They feel like, oh, this opportunity I didn't know about shows up. But if I do it, then the budget's always blown. I'm not going to worry about it. Well, sometimes in emergencies, we do need to definitely go out of the way with what we plan. But if we're spending time looking at it, we can make those conscious choices. So we always say actionable with a budget is go ahead and take that budget, and instead of squiggly lines in a file, squiggly lines on a refrigerator, squiggly lines on your bathroom mirror, something you can see of this is what I'm doing with my money and this is my goal, can be extremely important moving forward.
You mentioned something I thought is very prevalent. That kind of FOMO. I don't know how long these donuts are going to be here. Oh, we don't get chocolate in the meetings that often. Oh, my friends are going somewhere. FOMO is a real thing for a lot of people. How do we deal with those, again, kind of psychological issues that create roadblocks for us?
I think a lot of it is being realizing and being honest with ourselves that those are roadblocks that we are facing, right? I mean, you're 100% correct. And it is real. It's, all my friends are going out. It's going to be a good time. If I'm not there, am I going to miss something? What is going to happen? And so because of that, I really think that being honest with ourselves of saying, no, I'm not going to go. And I'm not going to go because my goal is this, and here's what I'm going to do. And what's going to be weird is your friends, they may look at you kind of sideways, but in the back of their minds, they're going, hey, that's kind of awesome. They got a plan. They actually have an idea what's happening, what's going on. Right?
Yeah. And if they don't want to, if they don't want to do that, then they're probably not your friends anyway, to be honest.
That's very, very true with what's going on. Something else that we see is that and something I have seen working with people over the last 15 years, and Dan, I'm going to guess you have seen it too, is when it starts working, people stop doing it, right? I've been budgeting. I'm working real hard. I'm keeping track of my money. My savings are going up. My debt is decreasing. It's working so well on these secondary goals, right? Not budgeting, but again, with savings or credit or debt is going so well, I'm going to stop doing the work that actually allowed me to do that. And you know what we have found is that people fall right back into those old habits real fast. I like to call that the prescription problem. You're right. I went to the doctor. They said, take a prescription. I'm taking it. I feel better. So I stopped taking the whole entire thing. And then it comes back and I go back to the doctor and the doctor says, well, did you continue doing it? Well, no, I stopped. Well, it came back. Right. And we see that happen so often.
No, it's a huge issue. One of the things that I've heard, and I want to get your opinion on, is the way that you can avoid that is to celebrate with small rewards as you achieve your goals.
I love it.
Is that true?
Oh yeah. Celebrate and recognizing the accomplishments that we made. Something that we have seen over and over in many different environments is that if my goal is to get them to use my hands, my goal is to get from point A to point B, and we make it this far, we say, oh, I haven't done this. I'm such a failure. Why can't I do this? It doesn't work. When really we have made this much progress to the goal. And so recognizing and celebrating those milestones and those little successes along the way can be instrumental and keep going, because bad news for you, for me, for everybody, we're going to have setbacks. Something's going to happen, right? I don't care what kind of car you drive. I don't care how much you paid for it, the little logo that's on there or anything along those lines. It's going to break, right? You're going to need to change the oil. You're going to need to do those things. And so when that happens, understanding this did happen, it's a small setback, but we're continuing to move forward because the habits are good. The last thing I do want to talk about is something that we've seen often is that, well, I'm going to start budgeting and paying attention to my money when I have a financial emergency. I'm good now. I want to challenge that preconceived notion, right? If you do not practice when things are good on how to managing, yes, it's easy. Like I talked about flexing that muscle, you're not going to have that muscle to flex to say, look at all the work I've done, so I know how to do these things when there are those financial crises and things that are inevitable in everybody's life.
I think that's a great point, and I hate to use this analogy because I don't want to compare what we're doing here to people who are, in actually harm's way. But, you think about people who train in the military, train, right? And then the moment they deploy, everything goes awry. So, well, why did you even bother putting a plan in? Well, once you have a plan, when things go awry, that allows you to pivot.
Yep.
If you don't even have a plan in place when things go awry, it's total chaos.
100%. And something, Dan, I say often is that with fire alarms in schools. Why do you have fire alarms in schools? Fire alarms in school. Well, during an alarm, and it's a drill, right? You're messing around with your friends, you're getting up. But as soon as the teacher says, this might be a real fire, you line up, you go to where you need to. You're not messing around because you've practiced it when there was not that emergency or that necessity to take really quick action. And you have that plan in place and you know what we're doing.
You know what? That's a much better analogy, and I will start using that one in the future. We're about wrapping up here. I do want to throw one more thing out at you. Just you can just say yes or no. But I think another mental stumbling block we get is, again, people think of it as negative. I can never do these things again. Do you think people should be looking for substitutions rather than cutting things totally out of their budget?
Yes and yes. Being honest with yourself, you can cut things down, you can substitute things. I'm going to go back to.
I'm gonna pause you there.
Yes and yes.
Yeah, because we're running out of time. Richard, you've just been a wonderful guest. I want to thank you. But yes, think about those substitutes. I can go with my friends. I'll just have one drink, right?
There you go.
Richard, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you out there for joining us here on the topic. If you enjoy the show, follow us on Facebook and YouTube as Houston Community College District. To listen to the topic and more HCC TV programming, visit hccs.edu/podcasts. For the topic on HCC TV, I'm Daniel Scholl.